All right, we're going to kick off. Good to go. Welcome to SIM 335. This is Service Manager and Orchestrator together, Automation, Process and Compliance. My name is Adam Hall. I am the Technical Product Manager for System Center Orchestrator. On stage with me are Sean Christensen and Alex Josh, who I'll let them introduce themselves.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Christensen. I am the Technical Product Manager for System Center Service Manager, working alongside Adam.
My name is Alex Josh. I'm an architect at NetApp. I'm responsible for our private cloud integration strategy and help develop the NetApp OIP that we're going to be showing in just a couple of minutes.
So Sean and I are going to jump off the stage in a sec. Alex is going to kick off. Do you want to go to the next one? So what the flow we're going to go through today is Alex is going to show you how NetApp have picked up Opalis, which is the version prior to Orchestrator, and Service Manager 2010, which is in market today. He's going to show you how NetApp have built out on today's technology, give you an example of what you can do today. He's going to take you through that scenario. And then Sean and I are going to come back on stage. I'm going to do a little bit of demo and show you what we can do with Orchestrator and Service Manager from an integration pack point of view. And then Sean's going to take over and show you Service Manager 2012 and how there's a new connector framework allowing you to connect to System Center Orchestrator, just to give you a flavor for what we can do today and what we're going to be able to do tomorrow from an integration point of view, and then tomorrow from a connector framework point of view. So it'll take you through all of that journey. We have got plenty of time. There's around about an hour's worth of content with 75 minutes worth of time, so please ask questions. We want to make sure that you can get all the questions that you want. We have deliberately made sure that we've got plenty of time for you to ask and interact. Okay, so please, if you have questions, raise your hand. Come to the microphone would be good. If you don't want to do that, yell it out and we'll repeat the question. So really, what we want you to walk out with today is to understand what the products can do, how they work together. Sean and I will spend a bit of time differentiating Opalis/Orchestrator with Service Manager. They are very different but complementary products. And together, they come together to do IT process and automation. Any more you want to add to that, Sean?
You added it. You did it.
All right, so I think we'll kick off and hand straight over to Alex, who's going to take you through a demo of where we are with today's technology from a partner perspective.
Just have a couple slides first. So
Oh, do you have a couple slides?
Yeah.
Back it up.
Great. Thanks, guys.
There you go.
So your microphone on? Microphone on? Can I get my microphone? So maybe we just trade. Yeah, he has the wire.
He's on the wire.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Thank you. As Adam said, at NetApp, what we needed to do is we needed to create a solution that allowed our customers to build end-to-end workflows in the data center and automate the data center. And in the past, we had kind of attempted to do this on our own, but it's very difficult because as a storage vendor, we don't really own the entire stack. We don't make servers. We don't make a hypervisor. We don't make trouble ticketing systems. There's a lot of things that we don't do. So what we really needed was a generic framework that allowed us to add our value and then stat back and out of the way. And when the Opalis acquisition happened with Microsoft, that really caught our attention. We said, you know what, this really could be it. And as we started working with the product, we really realized that we were able to put together pretty complex scenarios in a very, very simple way. So the specific scenario that I'm going to show you today is one that we developed for our fast track submission, which we announced on Monday. So it's not quite on topic, but we're part of the fast track for Hyper-V program, and one of the things that they require as part of that program has to have automated tools for doing things like provisioning. So we could have gone out and written our own automator ourselves, but that didn't really make any sense. So what we did instead is we built NetApp-specific OIPs, and then we show examples of how to integrate that with System Center Service Manager, and that's what you're going to see. This is our product that you're going to see here is actually called OnCommand 3.0, and we are running it in our booth as well if you want to see it. The interesting evolution of this is that we actually started off with a prototype that I kind of wrote over the weekend kind of deal because I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was like, well, let's just try it, right? And as you see, the workflow is a little convoluted, and we had to go through some steps, and it was not really obvious to us the best way to build these workflows. So one of the lessons learned that I take out of this is as you're going through and you're building these workflows and you're building these integrations, you really want to think through what your business process really is, what you're trying to achieve, and take the opportunity to fix the broken business process before you automate it with Opalis, because this is a huge opportunity for you to fix things. So this is the workflow that we started with. This is the workflow that we actually shipped, right? A much simpler workflow. And the reason why we were able to do this is because we changed the way we were doing it. So we kind of took this as an opportunity to rethink the way we did things. So it's not really a technology change so much as a way of thinking change. And this project gave us an opportunity to kind of think about this differently. And so I would recommend that you probably want to do the same. I have this in a PowerPoint here, but oops, it's probably more interesting if we show it live.
Oops,
wrong one.
Yeah, don't look.
But awesome. So what we have here is the sample workflow that we shipped in the box in our Fast Track submission. And what we decided to do is we decided to build an integrated solution that had change management and change control built into the solution up front. For those of you that work in data centers for a living like I do, or I used to before I went to the vendors, that change control, it turns out, is one of the most important and at the same time most annoying things that IT people do, right? It's absolutely critical, but nobody likes filling out those silly log forms, right, because it's a pain. So what happens in this solution is because of the integration, the act of checking it into the change control system or requesting the change control actually does the work, which is, for me, a pretty cool thing. So what happened is that we said, what we really need is we need to have a work activity that says, I want to create a new VM. Now, there isn't one of those in Service Manager right out of the box, but we could create one. So what you see here is that I'm using this is actually the OIP out of the current version, the 6.3 version of Opalis. So it's not see, these guys get the really cool, sexy System Center Orchestrator demo. I get the kind of the current one. So what we did is we took the OIP that shipped in that box, the System Center Service Manager OIP, and we hooked that up to this object class that we built ourselves. And the OIP is pretty cool because as you add properties and things like that to your System Center Service Manager implementation, they show up here, right? So you don't have to worry about what was the name of that class object, or what was it called, or did I put a dash? You don't have to worry about that. It just shows up. You pick it off the list. So kind of peeling the onion back one layer further, if you go back into System Center Service Manager, what we actually had to do was we wanted to create a form that collected all the information for creating a VM in one step. And then the operator can just click OK, and things just happened. So we could have used the standard change control form. But what we decided to do instead was to make our own custom form. So we used the authoring tool to do that. And here's the form that we created. And what happens is you wind up with a management pack. And then you take that management pack and you install it in Operations Manager. So the user experience is pretty straightforward, right? You just go in here and you say, I want to do change management. I want change request. And then the whole thing just happens on its own. And all the follow-on steps are managed by Opalis. So that's the setup, right? So that's how we did it and why we did it. So I thought I'd just show it to you real quick. I actually have this on video just in the interest of time to walk through this. So here we're back in Opalis again. And what we're going to do is we're going to run this in a test window. Now, obviously, when Opalis is really running in production, you don't actually see anything on the screen because it runs as a service. But we're running this here so you can see something. So because it's a monitor object as the first step in the workflow doesn't actually do anything, right? Because Opalis is stateful. It's waiting for that object to change state. So from no new request to yes, there is a new request has to change before anything happens. So what you do is you go in and you request a new VM. You say you want a new VM. And then you go to the activities, and now you get that form that I showed you earlier, right? So here it is. And then you fill it out. So I want a new VM. What's the base name is, job, whatever. What kind of VM do you want, right? Where do you want it to go? How many? So this is a very simple, simplistic example, but it gives you the flavor of what you can do. I could have had a very complex business workflow in here. I could have had approvers. I could have had my budget code in here, whatever I wanted, right? But just to shows this, it shows it. And now what happens is that now our stuff runs. So is System Center Service Manager now our stuff. So what's happening now in the back end is we're actually provisioning VMs through what's called a sublum clone activity, which is a pretty actually complex piece of activity that has to occur. A lot of steps have to occur in a very specific order, as you saw in the previous workflow. And all that logic is now encapsulated in our OIP. So when we ship our product, what the customer actually gets is the OIP. They install it. And when they build the workflow, it's just click here kind of thing. All that complexity is hidden from them. But from our user base, one of the things that we always like to focus on is that simplicity of management, right? We spend a lot of time working with Windows administrators who are not really storage or SAN administrators. So we want this experience to be more Windows-like and easier for them to use. We don't want to make them storage PhDs, right? We want to just have them do their business. So now the last step of the workflow is it switches over and it goes into SCVMM, and SCVMM actually creates the virtual machine for us. Because again, that's what it's good at doing. Why would we write our own virtual machine manager when Microsoft already has one? So for those of you not familiar with SCVMM, this is all kind of standard SCVMM stuff. What it's doing is it created the VM, it's customizing it, it's giving the VM a name, it's adding it to the domain, it's giving it a NIC. All those kinds of activities are all happening now. The storage actually already happened. It was actually so quick, it happened in about 30 seconds. We cloned that 133 gig files in about 30 seconds. So that part went by really fast. Everything else is all about making sure the VM comes up as a member of the domain, has a proper name, has a NIC, the NIC is on the right network, and all those fun things you have to do to get a VM running. And now here we see in the cluster, we have the VM coming up, and this is the Windows startup experience, right? So this is the normal startup experience. Because it's a sysprep VM, right, which is a requirement for SCVMM, you get the standard startup experience. And now you basically are going to have a machine. And we kind of fast forwarded the video here. So you see it started at 3:16 and ended at 3:25. So I've only been talking for a couple minutes. But actually, the entire provisioning sequence took about 10 minutes. Just to compare the traditional way of doing this, it takes about an hour, right, to copy the file and all that kind of stuff for a 133 gig machine. So now we're done. And you see that we have this computer called Job 1, right? It's not a member of the domain, but it could be. So, I mean, I think the actual details of what I'm doing under the covers are probably less important in this session. I think the message for this session is really about solving top-level business problems by putting these components together and letting the components each do what they're best at. So, what we're doing as a company is we're telling our customers, look, if you have these complex workflows, if you want to build these larger solutions, here are the building blocks, right? And we own those building blocks, and we're responsible for them. But then connect together those other building blocks, like Service Manager, using Opalis. And in fact, you guys are going to see some of this in the future stuff. But we saw a lot of this at MMS. And as a company, we're very, very excited about where this is heading in the 2012 iteration, right? Because now it's even more connected and easier to do. So our stated plan of record as a company is to really emphasize this particular way of building user solutions and to have less and less of our own fixed workflow. Because what we realize is when we're talking to large enterprise customers, what they've already got, right, a ticketing system, right, or they've already got a process for doing X, or they've got a billing system they have to integrate with, or whatever it is, right? Even something as simple like requesting an IP address. Sometimes there's a whole database just for managing your IPs. Sometimes it's a spreadsheet. But, so that all those other processes that already exist in your organization, the goal is to be able to leverage those and reuse those and integrate them instead of just paving it over and saying, nope, you have to buy all NetApp software and do it only our way. And, so that's a huge mind shift for us as a vendor. So, but it's been a super experience, and we're really excited about it. So we're looking forward to Orchestrator.
All right, so am I back on? Cool. So I've got a couple of questions for Alex.
Yep.
If you guys have any questions before he goes as well. So, I mean, what you saw there was Service Manager capturing all the knowledge, who asked for this machine to be deployed, all that information about the change request. You fill in the form once, captures what you want to do, captures all that knowledge. It's in your knowledge management tool, and then it hands off to, in this case, Opalis, which is then going out and executing on all the work and getting all the different bits together. So a couple of questions for you, Alex. You hadn't used Opalis much, obviously, before you'd done this.
No.
How did you find the ramp-up speed in terms of you installed Opalis and you looked at it and went, cool, blank piece of paper. What am I going to do with that? And you showed your early iteration in terms of you had lots there and you simplified it down. So what did your ramp-up look like?
The first try, the ugly one, took me about 2 weeks. Okay. And honestly, most of that was figuring out how to make our stuff do its thing. So, oops, I'm using the wrong command and that kind of stuff. I mean, actually creating an Opalis Hello World app, I did that the first day, right? That wasn't very hard. We spent most of the time, making sure that our pieces were right and how we were a little lucky because we already had a .NET API that we were writing against. So what we wound up doing is using the Quick, which is the Opalis kind of SDK, if you will. And then we took our existing .NET API and simply called that from a new .NET project. And that was the easiest thing for us. Our first idea was just to use the command line version of the Quick and just call command lines. But because of the way we're implemented, it was a little slow, right? Because what happens when you call our command line, we actually create a new process, and then that takes time, and then we do the action, and then we shut down. Then you make another call, we do the same thing, and then we shut down. So we said, well, we're not going to do that. We actually call directly into the API. So we chose to make a little bit more investment there, and that's why it took. So all of that took about 2 weeks for the prototype.
So a question that I get a lot is, do we have an integration pack for name any application that you want in the world? Now, we don't have a NetApp integration pack. You can see in Alex's Opalis graphical interface there that there's a couple of integration packs on the right-hand side with a number of activities. So that's a good example where Alex has created his own integration pack. We provide you all the tools to do it. And as Alex says, all you need to know is how is your application going to work and what is it that you want to talk to. Running it through the Quick Integration Kit and creating the activities and creating the IPs is a relatively straightforward process.
Yeah, and then we were about 6 months from project inception to shipping product. So the prototype was 2 weeks. The entire product development was 6 months.
Which is pretty
Which
good.
for us is actually lightning fast. We're not that fast.
Question?
Yeah, question. Consider Microsoft intake process for getting integration packs together, much like your Microsoft HCL website. Is there a sort of intake process for Microsoft to review, integrate, and release these packs out to the Opalis world?
So the question was, is there a process of a Microsoft certification if you build an integration pack? The answer is no, and there won't be. We are very deliberately not going to do that. We provide all the tool sets and we provide all of the websites. You can submit your integration pack up to a new Technic gallery that's going to be available, but we don't intend on certifying like Alex's NetApp integration pack. We have no plans to create a certification process because if we certify it, we have to support it. Now that would mean we would need NetApp engineers sitting inside our support engines. What we're going to do is work with companies like NetApp to validate that they understand how to do it properly, and they then become what's called a System Center Alliance partner. And when they do that, they get to post onto the Microsoft site the IPs. So we're not going to certify the IP, we're going to certify the company to say they know how to build integration packs. So that is the plan that we intend to go through.
So the marketplace, not a certification, it's more a marketplace.
Correct. It'll be a marketplace where you can go browse them, and there will be 2 different marketplaces. One for just pure community-driven ones where you can put source code up there. That's Codeplex. So if anybody who creates an IP, I've created one, you can post it up to Codeplex and say, hey world, I created this, it's over there. Here's how I did it, here's all the code. And then there's going to be a marketplace which is more for the System Center partners who have gone through a process of understanding how to do it. That's a great question.
Yeah, and just FYI, we decided to post our prototype. So when we were fooling around and we kind of went through this voyage of discovery, we said, well, the prototype code, we're just going to go ahead and post that up so that people know what's going on if you want to create your own. And then now the shipping production one, we're probably going to keep that code confidential, and we'll just provide the compiled version only. That's just a go-to-market decision that we chose to make.
Great question. Any other questions for Alex before he leaves the stand? So the question is integrating this kind of scenario with MDT. Did I hear that? Yeah. I'm not an NDT expert. I know kind of what it does. I do know that we're talking to the deployment guys internally, Ben Hunter and his team, and the team that are around them, about what role Opalis plays in MDT moving forward. We haven't come to a complete conclusion. In all reality, it'll be Orchestrator, not Opalis. So could you do it today? I don't see any reason why not. Opalis is not particularly well suited to being implemented into that simply because it has a great outbound connection system through the integration packs, but it has a very poor inbound connector. Orchestrator, one of the new functions that we've got, is the web service, and the web service is an inbound connector which would allow MDT to call Orchestrator and have it go and do what Alex has built. So There's no reason why you couldn't do it with Orchestrator. And the MDT team are still working through what this looks like in terms of what they've done. All right, we're going to let Alex jump on stage. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Sean and I are going to spend a little
about
bit of
the new
time
stuff.
talking about stuff and showing some stuff and looking ahead to System Center 2012. So this is a conversation, just Sean and I sit across the hallway from each other in Building 44 back in Redmond, and the number of conversations we have yelling across the hallway as to this information, what's the difference between Orchestrator and Service Manager? Doesn't Service Manager already have a workflow engine? Doesn't it already do all of this? And aren't they basically doing the same thing? There are some very big differences between Orchestrator and Service Manager. There's a little slither in the middle that looks like it might be the same thing, but it is a very small slither, and it really only looks like it's the same. And so we sat down and came up with this list of what are the key differences between Orchestrator and Service Manager. And so we came up with sort of 4 key pieces of information here, and if we go through each one. So from an Orchestrator point of view, we integrate across technology solutions. Our role is to bring integration and orchestration and automation, which are the 3 words we use, bringing all the different bits together. So you may have application over there, a solution over there, you've got the hardware levels like Alex is talking about, all the different bits. Our job is to make a connected framework so that you can talk to all those different bits.
Yep. And from a Service Manager standpoint, while you still have a lot of those similar capabilities, where we see where Service Manager fits is in the IT process management, data retention, and kind of coordination of all the bits that Atom then goes and, or Orchestrator then goes and runs. So we have that connector framework to connect out to other System Center products like Configuration Manager, Operations Manager, with 2012, Orchestrator, Virtual Machine Manager, and then Active Directory to pull in and centralize all of the bits and pieces of your infrastructure, both from an automation standpoint as well as from an infrastructure standpoint, to give you that visibility and allow you to organize and coordinate how you're going to go and run and automate your data centers and your IT operations.
The next line, I think, is the one that really nails it. If the other ones don't quite work for you, this one absolutely should. Orchestrator is a system-level runbook engine. Okay, it is system level. It doesn't really care where the knowledge is. It doesn't retain knowledge. I start something, I finish it, and I forget about it. That's it. That's what Orchestrator does. It's an execution level thing. It integrates with it. It may get told what to do. It may choose what to do. It might be monitoring something, but it starts a process. It does a whole lot of technological system level execution steps, and then it forgets that it's done it at all. What it does, though, is tell Service Manager
That it did it.
that it did it.
Yeah. So if we follow a scenario of what was being talked about where we're provisioning a virtual machine, Service Manager would capture the information of what's the name of the virtual machine, what operating system you're going to use, what, say, if you want to install a database on there, what database you want to use, and what name you want to give it. You then pass that over to Orchestrator. He grabs it, goes off and runs with it, delivers it, comes back, says, yep, I'm done, and then forgets it. All the information about what you executed and what was captured is retained and held within the Service Manager request for reporting and reference later on. Question, sir?
Yes. As far as the difference between a change request and change control,
Mm-hmm.
something like a user-initiated request, such as a request for software in Service Manager, is treated as a change request. But something like an administrator wanting to make a virtual machine,
Mhm.
and an orchestrator carrying that out, and then giving that data back to Service Manager, is that also logged as a change request with the actions and the action log? Or after said services were delivered, such as a VM being created, is that then appended to the action log in that change request?
So I'll answer that. So the question is, in Service Manager, right now requests for, say, user requests for software are logged as a change request, just as much as provision new virtual machine is also logged as a change request. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how does that differ
Right.
with the next release?
Well, basically what I'm saying is the change request database in Service Manager meant for change requests as much as change control?
Okay. In the current release of Service Manager 2010, Yes, because that's the only mechanism we have.
Right.
Service Manager 2012, as part of the wider System Center 2012, we're introducing service request fulfillment. So you will have the concept of a service request, please give me X, versus change management, which is we're going to ensure proper change control procedures are in place for our larger implementations.
Right, and that's the primary reason that we've left change requests as far as like just for user-initiated requests.
Mhm.
And our change control on the administration side, we've left that out, and we're waiting for, something suitable to put that in.
Yep.
So we're gonna, I guess we can use service requests.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, so session tomorrow, which I've got a slide of what that number is. We're doing a sneak peek at Service Manager 2012, so come take a look at that one.
Nick,
But
oops, sorry, Karen.
I would say the key thing is Service Manager remembers what you did and why you did it, and what the information was relating to a particular request, whether it's a service request or whether it's a change, or whether it's an incident. We can integrate to Orchestrator all three scenarios. Orchestrator takes that and automates the tasks that were needed in order to fulfill either the service request, the change control procedure, or the incident.
I think that the last two, the lines there around the standard operating procedures and the runbook execution is, in my world, you do something, you do it fast, and you do it whichever way you're told to do it. There's no concept of a best practice in terms of a runbook. A runbook does whatever it's told to do. You can put the wrong icons together in the wrong order and do something really bad and really fast, and it's a very dangerous tool. The idea is that Service Manager captures the correct way to do it and what the best practices are, what the business policy is around who gets something, when they get it, who pays for it, who signs it off. I personally, in my world, don't care. I just do what I'm told. But over here is basically mum and dad saying this is the way you do it and this is the way life is. And basically together you get the execution level as well as the knowledge capture and the guidance around how to do it the correct way. And Alex made a good point around reimagining your processes and looking at them and saying, is that the best way to do it? Just because you've always done steps 1 to 5 doesn't mean that you have to do 1 to 5. Maybe step 3 is no longer actually required and it adds no value whatsoever other than taking a lot more time. Reimagine what it should look like and create your runbooks based on what you need to do as opposed to what you always have done. Okay?
Yeah.
Got any more?
No, that's
Cool.
pretty good.
So,
You're going to demo something.
I'm going to demo something, yeah. So I'm going to... Not stand anywhere near each other. Was it you or was it this?
That's the light.
That one's off? All right.
So I'll stand over here.
Please. All right. That's what
It's
happens
somewhat
when...
ironic because it works, Service Manager and Orchestrator work together. We just, never mind, bad joke.
It's what happens... It's what happens when you put a New Zealander and an Australian on the stand at the same time.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the integration between Orchestrator and Service Manager. So this is Orchestrator 2010, 2012, Orchestrator 2012, with Service Manager 2010. Okay, so I'm going to go through what the integration pack looks like. There's two different levels of the way Orchestrator and Service Manager work together. Integration packs, which is the way that Orchestrator gets information to and from Service Manager. And then Sean's going to go through pure 2012 on both sides and what the new connector framework looks like and how we go even deeper in the 2012 suite. So what we have here, and I've completely lost my mouse on that side. All right, I'll do it from here then. What we have is this is System Center Orchestrator. This is the Runbook Designer. So Alex had up Opalis 6.3. You'll notice it looks kind of exactly the same, and it's a very deliberate revamp. The move from Opalis, which is a subsidiary in the product that we bought, to System Center Orchestrator, which is the first Microsoft release of the product. The base product, where you create runbooks, has changed very little. There's a new name at the top, and there's some under-the-hood stuff that you can't see that has changed, but the interfaces are basically exactly the same. Alex talked about the integration pack, and he had some NetApp ones installed. For this demo, we've got the Service Manager integration pack, and we have built in a number of standard activities that we do with Service Manager. It's not everything you can do with Service Manager. These are ones that we provide out of the box to get you going. They're common tasks, and the demos that I do, basically, I use the ones that are there. where you want to do something with Service Manager that's not an activity, that's where PowerShell kicks in, and you can just compile your PowerShell command line and run it through Opalis as well. So a few examples that I want to show you. This is one that Sean and I did first, I think, back in Berlin, TechEd Berlin last year, which was updating the CMDB. And there's an interesting setup with Service Manager and Active Directory in the 2012 range, where the connection to Active Directory is inbound only.
And and that does not change even with Service Manager 2012, but you have a very real scenario that often happens. People call up the service desk or call into IT and say, hey, can you update my phone number in Active Directory? Sound reasonable? Yeah. So where do you update that? Well, if you're the service desk, it'd be nice to update it directly into Service Manager, make that change. However, because of the one-way integration, next time Active Directory syncs, which if you remember, if you were in my session this morning, that's every hour,
Override.
it's going to get overwritten. So we said, let's write a little run book.
And so this is how hard it is. And this does two things. It asks you for the name of the user, and we're updating two fields just for demonstration's sake. We're updating the city that the user is in, and we're updating the company. You can update any fields you want. We just picked those because we did. So we have a user here, Bob J, and we can take a look in Active Directory. We can see that his city is not populated in Active Directory, and in the organization, his company is not populated either. If we jump across to Service Manager and go and have a look at his account, Bob J.
Where's Bob? There he is.
And have a look in Service Manager just to confirm before I run it that this does actually work.
You did hit it indeed.
There we go. We've got city and company are blank. Okay, so this is a situation where if you're just on the service desk and you've got no rights to Active Directory, which is a pretty common task for someone like, the kind of people that would update this, level 1, they might update this and then it just gets overwritten and doesn't get put back. So what we're going to do is run this runbook. We're going to jump over to, this is a new component of System Center Orchestrator. It's the web console. You can come here and we are going to go into the service management runbooks, and we've got an automated action runbook called the Update the CMDB. We're going to start that, and it's going to say, cool, who is it that you want to update, and what are the fields you want to populate? You could have a big list here and just populate the ones that you want. It doesn't really matter. For the username, we're going to update Bob J. Company name, Contoso always seems to work well. Actually, let's leave the capital just to prove that I'm not faking it. And we're in Atlanta. We'll run that on our local server, hit start, and it's going to kick off. And that is now processing in the background. Now, just to show you what that looks like when it runs, and you can see I've done a bit of testing. This allows you to see where that runbook is in processing at the moment, and that's going out. I'll explain what is actually happening once this diagram comes up. So what we're doing, first step is it's validating. Did I type a username that exists? Is it a real username? And does that record exist in Service Manager? So the first thing it's doing is getting the user, and this is an activity that hits Service Manager and says, go get the user account and validate that it's all okay. Then it branches off into the two different fields that we're going to update, the city and the company. It uses the update activity in the integration pack, update Service Manager, and to make sure that we're updating Active Directory as well, I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is an example of a PowerShell commandlet that's running. And if I do Control-1, there we go. So this is a very simple PowerShell commandlet. It imports the Active Directory commandlets, and it runs the set AD user with identity and sets that field in place. Okay. Now, if we go and have a look at Service Manager, we open Bob J back up. All going well. We should have Atlanta in there and Contoso with a capital O. And if we have a look in Active Directory, we should see Atlanta and Contoso there as well. Okay, so we weren't faking any of that. But the important things here are that there's a mix of the integration between Orchestrator and Service Manager. So this is Alex brought this up before, we're using the Service Manager connection. The class is an Active Directory user. As Alex showed you, if we click the little ellipses button at the end, this will take a sec. This dynamically builds a list. It talks to Service Manager and says, what are all the available classes that you can talk to? I chose Active Directory user. but you can select any of those that are there. You can see we're connected to Operations Manager, and those are there. And then in the fields, we're just doing a filter based on username. But again, out of Service Manager, we get all of the different characteristics. What are these called? Attributes?
Yep.
All the different attributes of the user account, and so that we can say, what do we want to update? Okay. So that's the way that the integration packs work today. You have 1, 2, 3, 9, 12, 13 different activities that you can link together and integrate with Service Manager out of the box, Opala 6.3, Service Manager 2010. Okay, and there will be an updated integration pack for Service Manager 2012 with more activities in it as well. Any questions about the way
Questions
that
on this so far?
that particular bit works? Question? Yep.
Operator just simply PowerShell script, or are they kind of different? Some do different things.
The activities?
Yeah, each activity.
Okay, so the question is, are the activities just PowerShell with pretty graphics on the top, or are they different code? It actually depends. So the Data Protection Manager integration pack is pure PowerShell. So if I have a look at the data protection things, there's 7 activities there. They are all pure PowerShell. Okay, they use DPM remoting, using PowerShell remoting, and they all run through PowerShell. The Config Manager ones actually use C# code under the hood. The Service Manager ones are hitting the Service Manager API. So it's probably a bit of a mix as to what's going on there. So they can be anything, and the System Center integration packs vary depending on the best way to integrate with the other product. Service Manager's got a really rich API that you can hit, so that was the best way for us to do it.
Outside of the Service Manager toolset, it also depends on what the third-party
Yep.
solution would allow us to integrate to their solution using.
So if they have a rich API set, third party, then just get the APIs.
Yeah, and we have under Utilities, we have a Invoke Web Services foundation object, and literally you just point it at the WSDL, and if you run it that with no other parameters, it will get all the payloads back and tell you all the different things. It basically does a get on the web service, comes back and says, here's all the things that you could talk to me about, and then you can input those in. Before I hand over to Sean to show you what the connector looks like, just a few other examples to get you thinking. Here is a runbook that we created that goes and talks to the business services inside Service Manager, so the distributed applications that have been synchronized across from Operations Manager. We go out and we go and link together a number of services when we've got too many. So we've got a threshold check here, and there's a problem escalation one that we did, again, I think we did this back in Berlin for the first time, that runs at 6 a.m. each morning, and it talks to the business service and says, how many incidents have been raised against that property in the last 24 hours? Does it break a threshold that we've set? Now, we set a threshold of 3. We put 4 incidents in there and basically said, you know what? We've had 4 incidents raised against the same service. There must be something going on underneath. We're possibly fixing it every time, but there's an underlying root cause problem. So what we do in this runbook is we count those incidents, match it against the threshold, and it's over the threshold. We create a problem. We assign it into the problem manager's queue, and then alert them to the fact that it's there. So we now have all those incidents escalated up to a problem, all linked together, and then tell the problem manager that there's something going on and they need to do some root cause analysis.
The benefit there from a management standpoint is you're taking stuff that's available today and you're getting proactive about IT operations and IT management to give better value and be more strategic for the business.
And this is a great example. Here's a question. It's a great example of the difference between Orchestrator and Service Manager. I don't care what the problem is. I don't care who it's affecting. All I know is I've got a monitor running that counts the number of incidents. It's over a number that I'm told is the maximum that's allowed, and I go tell someone about it. And then I forget the fact that I ever told anyone. I don't care anymore, right? He cares.
Yep.
There's a question down the back. So the question was, is a history kept and is it logged? The answer is yes to both. There are logs kept inside Orchestrator. You can log it just into the Orchestrator database. You can log it to an event log if that's your preferred way of doing it. Or the fact that you've done something with Service Manager, there's now a record in Service Manager, whether it's an incident, a change, or something or other else. And we can also update this the way through. This is a very simple runbook. We could have at every step an upload going back into the change record that shows that we update. What's the history thing called? The action log.
Do you have the incident one?
The incident one?
The automated incident resolution?
Yes, I do.
So this is an example, while I'm getting it, this is an example of just that very thing. How do you keep track of it? You keep track of it in Opalis that, hey, I ran this runbook, but we also built one. Problem is,
There it is.
service mediation.
There we go. That's
So-
good. That's a good example of it.
So here's an example of one where we have a incident that's been logged into Service Manager. And instead of a analyst or somebody with an IT going and taking a look and saying, all right, how am I going to fix this? There might be some predefined activities that any incident gets logged, you want to go of a certain, say, categorization. You want to go maybe bounce the application, maybe bounce the server, and if that doesn't work, try one third thing, and if not, escalate it. So we actually built that into a runbook such that incidents logged, we try remediation step 1. If that fails, update the action log inside the Service Manager incident saying, hey, I tried this, didn't work. Go to action 2, tried this, didn't work. Go to action 3, yep, that worked, okay. Update the
It says
incident.
created take two. Yeah.
Create an activity to say, this is what we did, this worked, and then resolve the incident. If it didn't, then go ahead and escalate it and get actually a human involved to say, hey, we tried all the standard things. That didn't work. Someone's got to go take a look at it.
It's a good example of meeting your service levels as well. And if you look at things like AviCode and how you can do deep integration at a deep application insight level, and you know something's going on, you might see something happen and go, I know how to fix that. I'm going to go fix it. Now, the previous demo that we did around the escalation starts to kick in, where when you're automatically fixing things, you want to know if you're having to fix it over and over and over again, because there's something else going on, and that's where the escalation bubbles in.
Yeah, the benefit here is you get that, you're bringing two solutions together to drive greater efficiencies within your organization. We do a lot of this inside of our own data centers, combining Service Manager and Orchestrator. So we have several 100,000 square foot data centers with hundreds of thousands of servers and a staff of like 12 running 24/7 because everything is automated using Service Manager, using runbooks.
So that's kind of where we are today. I'll finish up there, and I think Sean's going to show you what Service Manager 2012 and Orchestrator 2012 look like when they come together. I think you're C. I think you're C. Yes.
There
we
so,
go.
What Adam showed you is what Orchestrator looks like within Orchestrator. Within within Service Manager 2012, we actually tighten up that integration between Orchestrator and Service Manager by bringing all of those runbooks into Service Manager so I can connect them and tie them by simply mapping fields to service requests or change requests. So without stealing all my thunder for tomorrow's session, because I want you to come to the System Center, the Service Manager 2012 session.
Go and show it off.
You know,
You can show it twice.
I can show it twice. That's true. I can't show it twice. Here we have inside of the server. This is pre-CTP code. So one thing I will caveat: everything you see here may change slightly as we get ready to release the beta.
Mine was more locked in. What I showed you is basically going to be with the beta in 3 weeks' time.
Our stuff, the guys are still madly coding even as I speak. We have inside the library a runbooks folder. Inside the runbooks folder, these are all the runbooks that are from Orchestrator. So I've connected out to Orchestrator using a Service Manager connector that we've added into Service Manager 2012 for Orchestrator to pull across all the runbooks that I have access to. Now, how I got to there is inside of Service Manager, in my administration tab, I have a connectors folder, and I have a series of connectors that we've created. Service Manager, if you were in my session this morning, we use a connector framework to integrate to the other System Center products. I'll go ahead and create a new one just to show you how I got the Orchestrator one. You can see we have connectors for Active Directory, Config Manager, Ops Manager from an alert perspective to bring in Ops Manager alerts, Virtual Machine Manager, that's coming, that's new, and Orchestrator. So I'll select that, click Next, give it a name. Orchestrator. Oh, nope, sorry. Then we want to specify the actual Orchestrator web service that we connect to. Which one is that? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the existing one because it's already set up.
So this is connecting to the new web service. So the Silverlight console that I showed you sits on the top of the new web service, which is the inbound connector. So Service Manager is basically leveraging the new Orchestrator web service that the PowerShell provider, the new Silverlight console, and the new reporting and analytics out of Orchestrator. Service Manager uses the exact same infrastructure. There's nothing new to do. You just say it's over there.
So here we go. I had a bit of a brain melt in terms of the actual web service. So here's the web service URL that we use to connect to Orchestrator. We then specify our run as credentials. So we're just doing a simple query into Orchestrator, say what are all the runbooks that we've got. And then I select what folder I want to pull across. For my specific runbooks. In this case, I've got a folder called policies, and I have a series of subfolders that contain a series of runbooks that I want to pull across into Service Manager. Now the benefit is I select the topmost folder as part of my connector, and it pulls in everything below that. All the child nodes underneath that topmost folder. I then hit OK, and I let that run. Now the first run, it's going to go off, it's going to pull everything in from those runbooks. And this is what you see here of those particular runbooks. So if I pull up one, let's use one I have here called Create Virtual Machine with SQL. This is a runbook that asks for 4 variables. What's my virtual machine name? What's my template name? The template is the operating system template that I'm going to grab. What's the SQL version, and what cloud am I populating it to? If I step out and look at...
So while Sean's doing that, think about Alex's demonstration earlier where he had a custom form created in Service Manager to get that information captured in order to hand it off to Opalis.
Yep.
Here he just builds his runbook, which says what he needs. It'll just expose it automatically in the console. So Alex wouldn't have needed to create that.
Yeah. So if I step
She's
over
smiling
to,
about, by the way.
in this case, into Opalis, this was set up at the time using 6.3. I have my Create Virtual Machine with SQL runbook here that does 2 steps, accepts the inputs and creates the virtual machine. If I open that up, I can see template name, SQL version, cloud, and virtual machine name. The same variables that were present inside of Service Manager, I now don't have to exit Service Manager and go into Orchestrator. I can work with that runbook directly in Service Manager. Now, how we do that, I'm going to show you, is through the new service request fulfillment capability as an example, where here I have, and tomorrow I'll show you the new portal and show you how I created this. I have my request that was logged called Create VM with SQL. Through my portal, I asked for a VM template, SQL version, cloud, and VM name. So here's the attributes that I collected as part of that request that I have in my service request form. And I have a series of activities that are part of this request to go execute it. So user has come to my portal and said, I need a new virtual machine, and I want SQL installed on it. And by the way, make it Windows Server, what did I say, 2008 R2?
We certainly hope so.
Exactly. So that's what we've prompted them, saying, give me a platform, give me a name, give me a SQL version. What cloud do you want it placed in? So I've captured that information from the end user. I'm now taking that information, I'm passing it into my service request, which, by the way, has an approval activity. So we're wanting to make sure that, hey, someone can't just create requests of new clouds willy-nilly. They have to actually have someone say, yes, you can go ahead and do that. So once that approval activity is completed, that information that we collected from the end user, passed into the service request, is then passed to Orchestrator to go create the cloud. So the only person that has touched this request is actually the person who said, yes, you may go do that. The rest of it is all automated. And all we did was take the runbook that was pre-built, and we mapped the appropriate values from the service request into that Orchestrator runbook. How we got those runbooks into Service Manager was through the Orchestrator connector that we introduced with Service Manager 2012. Questions?
Any questions on any of that? Does it all kind of like
Yes, sir.
make sense?
I'm assuming you're changing the way activities are represented in here because there's now branching or something like that?
Very good observation. Yes. So in Service Manager 2010, you would have seen activities represented as simple entry lines, almost like in a table. we are introducing as part of Service Manager 2012 much more graphical interface to represent those activities because we introduce the ability to do parallel activities, grouping of parallel activities, branching off, and you can get much more complex in terms of what's the flow of a service request, of a change request, of a the other aspects of Service Manager.
Good question.
Very good question. Very good observation, too.
Any
other questions?
No one wants to know anything about Service Manager, Orchestrator,
Orchestrator?
how it works together?
Yeah, so if I, okay, I'm doing this with pre-beta code, so let's go ahead and
What are you doing?
I'm going to run it.
Ooh.
So I bring up my approval request. I'm going to say approve. Go do it. Okay, hit apply. Now that should apply that. I need to let that think for a
It's
minute.
in progress.
That's got to think for a little bit. What you'll see in a little bit is that activity is going to change to a tick box, see a check mark, and the create VM with SQL will then turn into, you'll see that executing. So
This is
the
a
little
really
play
good
icon.
example of the difference between the Service Manager workflow engine and the Runbook automation engine that's in Orchestrator. Service Manager needs a number of automations, orchestrations, and workflows just to be a product. So moving from one step to the other, you don't want to go out and then back in again. That's an internal
we go.
mechanism. And a lot of the systems, there it goes.
So there we go.
And a lot of the systems
like
that are
you saw,
products
so approve
have
request,
that.
done. Thank you. So visually you can see, hey, that step's completed. Now we're on to create VM with SQL. And if I jump over here, yeah. Let's refresh that. Come on.
There you
There
go.
it is.
Creating the
so
virtual
that
machine.
runbook has gone off, taken that information, and is now executing and creating that virtual machine for me. Yes? Absolutely. Yep.
So
So very good question. Let me just repeat it, hopefully, and I'll look back to make sure I got it all right. So the question was, according to ITIL or IT best practices, could we take these run books and have them executed either at the service desk level or within IT operations? About right? The answer is yes to both. ITIL doesn't necessarily differentiate in terms of where these should take place. I will say this. It's been researched and proven that from a cost standpoint, if you can have stuff stay at the service desk level, the cost of delivering those services, either responding to a service request or fixing an error, is like 25 bucks. It's quite cheap. The moment it steps from level 1 at the service desk to level 2, so first level, escalates up a level from the service desk, it jumps by a factor of 10. So at $25 becomes like $250. And it starts getting really expensive. So the more you can automate and give it to the service desk, it's going to be easier and more cost effective. So yes, you can, from an ITIL standpoint, really doesn't differentiate. What we're doing is we're standardizing, we're automating to deliver greater consistency of service. ITIL does say do that. And we're making it, you potentially make it available to the service desk. Or in this case, service desk wouldn't even touch this. It just has to be approved. Now, as part of that approval, I could have said, have the line manager for that user approve it. So the line manager gets an email notification. They respond to the email saying it's approved. Service manager processes that, so it captures, yep, we've had the request, we've had the approval. Orchestrator then says, cool, I'm ready, and off I go. and creates our virtual machine.
The automation of those standard operational procedures is one of the key functions that we see with Orchestrator, where password resets is an interesting one because identity management is a little blurry as to where you would do that. But a lot of those other tasks, whether it's moving a database, whether it's backing up files, checking logs, trawling through event logs, whatever it is, all those things that people might be sitting there do manually, then you can have these monitors running, and the ability to run something, break and wait for a result, such as a person to say, yeah, it's okay, and then picking that up and carrying on. Now, automation doesn't mean it has to be a system level, end-to-end, no stopping. It can be run for a bit, wait for someone, because you may need a person to make a decision. We did a session on Monday with how we're using, it's actually Opalis internally at this stage, and patch management is one of the scenarios that they use in the desktop management. We had Charlie Satterfield on team. They manage about 300,000 desktops. Patch management has a break in it that says someone's going to say it's okay to run that patch to 280,000 desktops. There's no automation in that process. That someone is going in and saying, yes, it's okay, you can go. Here's a good example of where you didn't want a system to choose to roll that. You want someone to basically take ownership and say yes. But all those standard operational procedures, absolutely, it should be a self-service, go in, do it, approval where required.
Yep.
Now, it does require you to understand your processes really well. And there is a lot of work that goes into making sure you understand it, map it out, optimize before you even touch the technology.
Sir, in the back.
Between Opalis and Orchestrator?
That's a good question.
So the question is, if you build something in Opalis, how much of a change is it moving to Orchestrator? File export, file import. There are some under the hood changes depending on exactly what you've done. You would want to run it through the testing console and make sure it's okay. Everything that you saw me run in there was a straight export out of 6.3, import into Orchestrator. Same integration packs, same everything comes across. There are some changes and you'll need to test, but we're going for a high degree of mobility between them. So the integration between Service Manager is only to Orchestrator, not to Opalis. So you'll need to move across to Orchestrator before you can do what Sean showed you.
And from a runbook standpoint, you can still create your runbooks in Orchestrator.
Yeah.
When Service Manager 2012 was released, the connector will bring those runbooks in so that you can call them from within Service Manager. Now, that being the examples that we were showing you of Service Manager 2010 and Opalis 6.3, Opalis had to sit out there and had a monitor just sitting waiting and was polling Service Manager to say, hey, check, is there a service request for me? Is there an incident for me to work on?
It's a pull.
It's sitting there going, let's look. With Service Manager 2012 and Orchestrator, that becomes a Service Manager telling Orchestrator, hey, go do.
Yeah.
It'll be an event, yes, exactly.
Today we're a monitor with Opalis asking on a regular basis that you define, is there something for me to do that matches my criteria? 2012, it's a push where it goes, yeah, you've got something to do and here it is, go do it.
So
Good
we
question.
just-
Question, sorry.
On this one, it's just about completed. It's, for some reason, not wanting to finish creating the virtual machine, but you can see all the tasks that were associated with it. It's been stepping through and creating all the components of that virtual machine. When this completes, you'll see the service request will get updated with a tick box, and it'll get closed.
There was a question over the far back first, sorry. Yeah, so no other we're just showing you the new functionality between Service Manager and Orchestrator, point to point. Everything else to do with Orchestrator is still there. This is just a particular connector that we're drilling into a bit deeper. Absolutely. There's
Question down here.
on your next.
Yep. Yep.
Is that going to be something supported out of box, such as, like you said, the parsing of an email, looking for the word approve?
So the Exchange connector is available and does everything I've just said. Technically, it is not a supported utility. We're working on getting that to be supported. We're trying for 2012. Can't guarantee it, but it's there. We have many customers, when I say many, like 50 to 100 customers who are using it in production, have tested it. It's a community-developed utility or connector that was developed that does inbound and outbound messaging.
Right. The only reason I asked is in my SCSM development environment, I tried out Travis Wright's Exchange Connector project. The only issue we had is we needed easier, seamless ways for manager-type people to not have to use the console. And when we tried the Exchange Connector, it seemed to like it required the word approved or rejected in brackets, let's say. And even though that's not a big deal to me, we really wanted like a very seamless experience for management, non-technical people
Yep.
to be able to easily improve activities wherever they are.
Yep. So the inside of the Exchange Connector, you can pre-configure what words you need to see. Now, what we've seen some of our customers do is they've actually created an email template that embeds the mail to hyperlink that gets sent to the manager for approval. So when they see the email pop up on either their phone or they see a hyperlink of approve or a button, approve, reject. They click that, it generates a new message with all pre-formatted with the right keywords, and they just hit send. So that's one way you can do it. We still have to have the proper keyword, still has to be formatted correctly so that we can process it, but there are other ways to be able to get to that end goal and make it easier for managers to consume.
Yeah, to present it to them in an easy way, right?
Exactly.
There's a question over here.
Are you going to provide additional templates for standard operation activities like creating users out of visit EHR databases?
So the question is, are we going to create effectively a library of ready-made runbooks? So that is on the to-do list. We intend on building that library over time. For the Orchestrator release later this year, we intend on having some libraries. We will continue to build that out. They will always be 60, 70, 80% of what you need to do, and then you'll need to tailor them for your particular process. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges we found is when we went out and spoke to our customers about, all right, so if we created a library, what would it be in there, and just basically left it an open field, I would say about 10% of the requests were common across all customers, and the other 90% were completely different in every single case. And it's simply because what you want to do doesn't match what you want to do, which doesn't match what you want to do, and it got really, really hard. And we basically then, okay, either we start dictating the way to do things, which is not necessarily a good thing unless it's a really good best practice, or we teach you how to fish and make it really easy for you to build. And we're kind of going down that way, but we want to give you lots of examples. And we've got lots of blog posts and lots of examples of how to do it. And we intend in the future to have not only a blog post of how to do it, but an export file that you can download, import, and go, oh, that's how they did it. I'll just kind of manipulate that. Want to help you do that. It's just really hard because what you want to do might not be the same as the other 99% of the world.
I'm excited. It finished.
All right.
Yes.
So we have got a few minutes left. I unfortunately do need to duck off because I need to go do a TechNet Edge interview. But we will be around. I think Sean and Alex are still going to be here.
Yep.
And certainly I'm going to be around in the booth for the rest of the week as well. So please, if you have questions for me, please come and see me or send me an email, adhall@microsoft.com. I do apologize for needing to duck out 5 minutes early.
So we brought it all
Just
together.
jump to the end because there's loads of slides. Yeah.
So don't forget to fill out your evaluations. Tomorrow's session on Service Manager 2012 is happening. And if you do have any questions, as Adam said, adhall@microsoft.com or Sean.Christensen@microsoft.com.
Seacrest.
Seacrest. Yeah. There's our Twitter handles there as well. As Adam said, my next session is just down the hall, so I'll be here to answer any further questions you might have afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.